The text message came through at 11:47 p.m., 3 weeks after the wedding that changed everything. Amanda, they know it's fake. Meet me at the harbor in 20 minutes. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. We have a serious problem. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a single dance with a stranger turned my life completely upside down, and how a fake relationship became the most real thing I'd ever known. Please, subscribe to this channel, more story coming up. Hope you have subscribed. The reception hall sparkled with 1,000 tiny lights, each one seeming to mock my solitude. I sat at table 9, strategically placed near the service entrance where the catering staff rushed past with trays of champagne I couldn't justify buying. My younger sister Emma glowed in her ivory wedding gown, 22 years old and radiating the kind of optimism that comes from never having your heart truly broken. The Metropolitan Ballroom in downtown Boston was everything a wedding venue should be. Vaulted ceilings, polished hardwood floors, windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, offering views of the harbor lights twinkling in the distance. I dropped my 4-year-old son Marcus with my best friend Rachel 3 hours earlier, his disappointed face still vivid in my memory. He'd wanted to come, to wear the little suit we'd found at the consignment shop, to see Aunt Emma get married. But Rachel had convinced me otherwise. Formal weddings and preschoolers rarely mixed well. Better to keep him home where he could watch his favorite cartoons and avoid the family scrutiny that would inevitably land on me. That scrutiny had started the moment I arrived at 7. Alone. 27 years old, single mother, wearing a dress I'd owned for 3 years that still looked acceptable if you didn't inspect the seams too carefully. My cousin Melissa had swept past in the receiving line, her designer maternity dress showcasing a 6-month pregnancy like a trophy. Her husband, my ex-husband, had acknowledged me with barely a glance. Derek, the man who'd disappeared when the pregnancy test showed positive, who'd married my wealthy cousin 8 months later, who now stood across the ballroom looking like he'd never made the worst decision of his life. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at Massachusetts General Hospital, came home to a son who asked why he didn't have a daddy, and tried not to calculate how many extra hours I'd need to cover next month's rent. Amanda, sweetheart, you came alone? My mother's voice carried that distinctive tone of concern mixed with disappointment. She'd materialized at my table during cocktail hour, my father trailing behind with his usual uncomfortable expression. We'd hoped you might bring someone. There are several eligible men here from the Patterson family. You remember them, they own that tech company. I'm fine, Mom. I forced a smile. Marcus sends his love to Emma. Oh yes, the child. My mother's use of the child for my 4-year-old son spoke volumes. Rachel's watching him, I assume? Such a shame you can't afford proper childcare. They moved on before I could respond, circulating among guests who actually mattered. Family who'd made something of themselves. My older brother Nathan and his lawyer wife. Cousins with advanced degrees and investment portfolios. And then there was me. The pediatric nurse who'd left nursing school when she got pregnant, who lived in a studio apartment in a neighborhood optimistically described as revitalizing. Dinner had been endless. 5 courses of food I barely tasted while conversations swirled around me. The couple to my left discussed their vacation rental in the Hamptons. The woman across from me displayed an engagement ring that probably cost more than I made in a year. I smiled and nodded and wondered if anyone would notice if I left early. Then came the dancing. The DJ announced the couple's first dance, and Emma floated across the floor in her new husband's arms. My parents danced next, the picture of proud family. Nathan and his wife joined them. Even my younger cousins paired off, laughing and spinning under lights that made everything look softer than it was. Outside the windows, storm clouds had gathered over Boston's skyline. The weather forecast had promised clear skies, but nature had other plans. Thunder rumbled distantly, barely audible over the music. Within minutes, rain began streaming down the glass in sheets, turning the city lights into watercolor streaks. May I have this dance? Derek's voice behind me made every muscle tense. I turned to find him standing there alone, Melissa presumably taking a break or holding court somewhere with her circle of admirers. No, thank you. I kept my voice level. Professional. The same tone I used with difficult family members in the pediatric unit. "Come on, Mandy. For old time's sake." He was using that boyish charm that had worked once upon a time. Before I'd realized charm was all he had. "We can be adults about this." "We are being adults. I'm declining your invitation." I turned back toward the dance floor, hoping he'd take the hint. He didn't. "You know, it doesn't have to be this way between us. I know I made mistakes, but—" "Derek." I stood, suddenly exhausted. "Go back to your pregnant wife. Dance with her. Leave me alone." "My pregnant wife who's carrying my legitimate child," he said, and there it was. The cruelty beneath the charm. Unlike the accident that cost you your nursing degree. I should have thrown my drink at him. Should have caused a scene. Should have done anything other than stand there while he walked away, rejoining Melissa who'd appeared at the edge of the dance floor. She looked at me across the room, one hand on her rounded belly, and smiled a victor's smile. The music shifted to something slower, more romantic. Couples filled the floor, swaying together while the storm outside matched the one building in my chest. I sank back into my chair at table 9 and tried very hard not to cry in front of 200 people who already pitied me. That's when I noticed him. He stood near the bar, separate from the crowd but somehow commanding attention anyway. Tall, maybe 6'2", with light brown hair styled with casual precision and a build that suggested he spent considerable time staying fit. His suit was navy and impeccably tailored, the kind of quality you noticed without being able to explain why. But it was his face that held my attention. Strong features, a jaw that looked like it had been sculpted, and eyes that, even from across the ballroom, seemed to see straight through every defense I'd spent years building. He was watching me, not subtly, not with passing curiosity. He was studying me with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable but instead sent an entirely different kind of shiver down my spine. I looked away first, heat rising in my cheeks. When I glanced back, he was speaking with someone from the groom's family. I recognized the older Patterson brother who owned that tech company my mother had mentioned. They exchanged a few words, and then the stranger began moving through the crowd. Toward me. My first instinct was to run, to grab my clutch and make some excuse about checking on Marcus. But something kept me frozen in my seat while he crossed the ballroom with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. He stopped at my table. Up close, he was even more striking. Those eyes I'd noticed were gray-green, shifting in the chandelier light. A faint scar marked his left eyebrow, barely visible but somehow adding character rather than detracting from his appeal. He smelled expensive, sandalwood and something crisp I couldn't identify. "You've been sitting alone all evening," he said. His voice carried a slight accent that made me think of European cities and old money. "That seems like a waste." "I'm fine," I managed, though my pulse had picked up. "Thank you for your concern." "I don't think you are fine." He pulled out the chair beside me without asking and sat down. The movement was smooth, practiced. "I think you're miserable and trying very hard not to show it." The observation was so accurate it stole my breath. "You don't know anything about me. I know you came alone to a family wedding where everyone else is paired off. I know that man who approached you earlier said something that made you want to disappear. I know you've been checking your phone every 10 minutes, probably thinking about leaving." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Am I wrong?" "That's very observant." I set my phone down, suddenly aware of how transparent I must be. "Are you a friend of the bride or groom?" "Business associate of the Pattersons." He gestured toward the family I'd seen him with. "They invited me. Luca Moretti." He extended his hand. I took it, and his palm was warm against mine, his grip confident without being aggressive. "Amanda Hayes." "Amanda." He said my name like he was tasting it. "The bride's sister. The one who came alone." Word travels fast. In certain circles, everything travels fast. He released my hand but didn't move away. "I have a proposition for you, Amanda Hayes." This should have been where I made my excuses and left. Where I remembered I was a single mother with responsibilities and no room in my life for mysterious strangers with expensive suits and dangerous eyes. Instead, I heard myself say, "What kind of proposition?" Luca leaned closer, his voice dropping low enough that only I could hear over the music. Dance with me. Let everyone here see that you're not alone, not pitted, not forgotten. Pretend to be someone I'm seeing for the rest of the evening. I stared at him. You want me to pretend we're dating? We just met. Why not? It solves both our problems. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those gray-green eyes. My family is relentless about wanting me to settle down. Your family clearly enjoys reminding you that you're single. We could help each other. That's insane. Perhaps. He stood, offering his hand again. But the next song is starting. And your ex-husband is watching us from across the room with a very interesting expression. So what do you say, Amanda? Will you dance with me? The smart answer was no. The responsible answer was no. The safe answer was definitely no. I took his hand and stood. One dance. That's all. His smile was devastating. We'll see about that. Luca led me onto the dance floor with practiced ease. His hand settled at the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my dress, while his other hand clasped mine with surprising gentleness. For a man who moved with such confidence, his touch was remarkably controlled. You dance well, I said as we began moving to the music. He moved like someone who'd been trained, each step precise and effortless. My grandmother insisted on lessons when I was young. She believed a man should know how to lead properly. Something flickered across his face when he mentioned her. She passed away last year. Heart failure. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. She would have liked you. Luca's gray-green eyes met mine. She had strong opinions about women who could stand on their own. Who didn't need a man but chose one anyway. Is that what you think I'm doing? Choosing you? I couldn't help the slight edge to my voice. We just met. This is pretend. For now. His hand pressed slightly more firmly against my back, guiding me through a turn. But pretend has a way of becoming real when two people are honest about what they want. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded him this was temporary, a single dance to save face in front of people whose opinions shouldn't matter. Instead, I found myself moving closer, drawn by the warmth of him and the way he looked at me like I was worth looking at. The song shifted into another slow melody. Around us, couples continued swaying. I caught glimpses of familiar faces watching us with varying degrees of surprise. My mother's eyebrows had climbed toward her hairline. Nathan looked intrigued rather than judgmental for once. And Derek was staring from his position near the bar with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your ex-husband is very interested in our dance, Luca observed quietly. How do you know he's my ex? The way he looked at you when he approached earlier. Like he owned something he'd thrown away and suddenly wanted back now that someone else was picking it up. Luca's jaw tightened fractionally. Men like that are predictable. You don't know anything about him. I know he abandoned you when you needed him most. I know he married your cousin shortly after. And I know he's not worth the tears you've been holding back all evening. Luca's voice remained level, but steel ran beneath the calm surface. Am I wrong about any of that? I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. You're very presumptuous. I prefer observant. He guided me through another turn. And I'm right, aren't I? Being right doesn't give you the right to say whatever you want. No, but being honest does. We danced in silence for a moment before he spoke again. I apologize if I've overstepped. It's a tendency of mine. I see problems and I want to fix them. I'm not a problem that needs fixing. No. You're a woman who deserves better than what life has dealt recently. His thumb traced a small circle against my back, the gesture unconscious and somehow intimate. Let me give you that. Just for tonight. The song ended. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Luca released me slowly, as if reluctant to let go, then offered his arm. Shall we return to your table? I believe your family will have questions. They did. The moment we sat down, Luca pulling out my chair with old-world courtesy, my cousin Sarah descended like a hawk spotting prey. Amanda, you didn't mention you were seeing someone. Her smile was sharp. Aren't you going to introduce us? This is Luca Moretti, I said, trying to sound casual. Luca, This is my cousin Sarah. A pleasure. Luca's smile was polite and gave nothing away. Your family throws beautiful weddings. Oh, I'm not immediate family. Just a cousin. Sarah's eyes catalogued every expensive detail about him. Are you from Boston, Mr. Moretti? I spend time here now. My family is originally from northern Italy, but business brought me to the States several years ago. He draped his arm across the back of my chair, the gesture possessive and protective at once. Amanda and I have been seeing each other quietly for a couple of months. She prefers to keep her private life private. The lie rolled off his tongue smoothly. Sarah looked between us, clearly trying to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew about my life. A couple of months? Amanda, you never said anything. Like Luca mentioned, I prefer privacy. I reached for my water glass. Especially after everything with Derek. Sarah nodded knowingly. Of course, that must have been so difficult. But it looks like you've landed on your feet. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. He's gorgeous. Where did you two meet? The hospital, Luca answered before I could stumble through my own lie. My business partner's nephew was admitted to the pediatric unit. Amanda was his nurse. She saved his life with her quick thinking during a complication. He looked at me with such apparent affection that my breath caught. I asked her to coffee to thank her. She said no 4 times before finally agreeing. That sounds like Amanda, Sarah laughed. Always so cautious. More family members approached throughout the evening. Luca handled each interrogation with effortless charm, weaving details into our fake relationship that sounded entirely believable. He remembered everything I'd mentioned during our dance and incorporated it seamlessly. When my aunt asked about my son, he knew Marcus's name and age without hesitation, mentioned his love of dinosaurs and how smart he was for 4 years old. You're very good at this, I murmured when we finally had a moment alone. The reception had moved into the later hours, guests loosening up as the alcohol flowed and the dancing grew less formal. At lying? Luca's mouth curved. It's a useful skill in my world. What world is that exactly? You said business, but you never specified what kind. Technology consulting, among other things. His hand found mine on the table, fingers lacing through mine. I help companies optimize their operations. The Pattersons are clients. That's why I was invited tonight. Technology consulting. I studied his face. That's it. Would you prefer if I said something more mysterious? His thumb traced circles on my palm. Would that make this more interesting for you? This isn't about interesting. This is about getting through one evening without being the family disappointment. You're not a disappointment, Amanda. You're a woman who works double shifts taking care of sick children, who raises a son alone, who still manages to look beautiful even when you're exhausted and surrounded by people who don't appreciate you. His voice dropped lower. That's not disappointment. That's strength. The intensity in his gaze made my skin flush. Before I could respond, Derek appeared at our table. Melissa was notably absent. Can we talk? Derek's eyes were on me, pointedly ignoring Luca. Outside. Just for a minute. I don't think. It's fine. Luca released my hand and stood. I need to speak with the Pattersons anyway. Take your time. He walked away before I could protest, leaving me alone with the man who'd broken every promise he'd ever made. Derek sat in Luca's vacated chair. Who is that guy? And don't give me the hospital story. That's obviously fabricated. Why would it be fabricated? I work at a hospital. People meet there all the time. Because you would have mentioned him. You tell Rachel everything, and Rachel can't keep a secret. Derek leaned closer. I've been asking around. Nobody's heard of any Luca Moretti in the medical community. He's not in the medical community. His business partner's nephew was a patient. I stood, suddenly exhausted. And frankly, Derek, who I'm seeing is none of your business. You made that clear when you walked out while I was pregnant. That was different. I wasn't ready to be a father. But you're ready now? With Melissa? I gestured toward where his wife stood across the ballroom, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. Or is this baby more acceptable because she can afford the life you wanted? Derek's face darkened. Don't act superior. You're the one showing up with some stranger, pretending you've moved on. Maybe I have moved on. The words felt true as I said them, even though Luca was a fabrication. Maybe I'm finally happy. Happy? Derek laughed bitterly. Amanda, look at your life. You're a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. You work yourself into exhaustion and still can't afford decent childcare. That guy in the expensive suit? He's not going to stick around when he realizes what a mess your life actually is. The words hit their target, each one a reminder of everything I already knew. But before I could respond, Luca reappeared at my side. Is there a problem? His voice was silk over steel. No problem. Derek stood. Just catching up with my ex-wife. Then you're finished catching up. Luca's hand settled at my waist. The storm is getting worse. I'm going to drive Amanda home. Unless you have any objection? It wasn't really a question. Derek looked between us, clearly wanting to say something, but apparently even he recognized when he was outmatched. He walked away without another word. I can call a car, I said once Derek was gone. You don't have to. The rain is heavy. Let me drive you. Luca retrieved my clutch from the table. Unless you're uncomfortable being alone with me? I should have been. Every logical part of my brain screamed that accepting a ride from a stranger was foolish. But Luca didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who saw me clearly and decided I was worth protecting anyway. Okay, I heard myself say. Thank you. The car waiting outside was sleek and black, a driver already behind the wheel. Luca opened the back door for me, and I slid across leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He climbed in beside me, close but not crowding, and gave the driver my address. How did you know where I live? I asked. Your cousin Sarah mentioned it earlier when she was interrogating us. The building near the harbor. She seemed very pleased with herself for knowing. The drive through Boston's rain-soaked streets gave us privacy the ballroom hadn't afforded. City lights streaked past the tinted windows, turning everything into abstract art. Thank you, I said finally. For tonight. For what you did. It was mutually beneficial. Luca turned to face me. But I meant what I said earlier. About continuing this arrangement. For a few weeks. Until your family stops questioning and my family stops pressuring me about settling down. That's insane. I'd said this before, but somehow it felt more real now. More possible. You said that earlier. And yet you agreed to dance with me. His hand found mine in the darkness. Think about it practically, Amanda. You need breathing room from family expectations. I need the same. We can help each other. By lying to everyone we know? By giving ourselves space to exist without constant judgment. He squeezed my hand gently. A few weeks. That's all. After that, we can stage a quiet breakup. No one gets hurt. Everyone gets relief. I knew I should say no. Knew this was a terrible idea. But sitting in that car, still feeling the ghost of his hand at my back from our dance, I found myself considering it. I have a 4-year-old son, I said finally. He can't know about this. I won't confuse him with fake relationships. Agreed. This stays between adults. And if either of us wants out, we walk away. No drama. Of course. Luca reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card. Think about it. Call me if you decide you want to take me up on the offer. The car pulled up to my building. Luca walked me to the door despite the rain, waited until I was inside, then returned to his vehicle. I watched from the lobby as the car disappeared into Boston's stormy night. The card in my hand felt heavier than it should. I should throw it away. Should forget the whole evening and go back to my normal life. Instead, I tucked the card into my clutch, already knowing I was going to make a terrible decision. Monday morning arrived with Marcus jumping on my bed at 6, his energy levels apparently immune to the concept of sleeping in. I'd gotten maybe 4 hours of sleep, my mind replaying Saturday night in fragments. Luca's hand at my back. The way Derek's face had darkened when he saw us together. That business card burning a hole in my wallet. Mommy, wake up. Can we have pancakes? Marcus's blue eyes, pure Derek genetics, unfortunately, sparkled with 4-year-old enthusiasm. "Sure, baby. Give mommy 5 minutes to wake up, okay?" I dragged myself out of bed and into the day. Dropped Marcus at his preschool program by 7, then fought Monday morning traffic to reach Massachusetts General with barely 3 minutes to spare. The pediatric unit welcomed me with its familiar chaos of beeping monitors, anxious parents, and the antiseptic smell that had become as common as breathing. My phone started buzzing before I'd even finished morning rounds. Text after text from family members who'd apparently spent their Sunday discussing my mysterious appearance at the wedding with a man none of them had known existed. "Sarah, call me. You need all the details about Luca." "Nathan, Mom is freaking out. Who is this guy? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Even my mother, who rarely texted, had sent a message. "We need to discuss Saturday night. Your father and I have concerns." I silenced my phone and shoved it into my scrubs pocket. Whatever fallout was coming could wait until I wasn't responsible for keeping small humans alive. The morning passed in a blur of 4 checks, medication rounds, and comforting a 6-year-old girl recovering from appendix surgery. By noon, I'd managed to push thoughts of Luca and his ridiculous proposal to the back of my mind. I was updating a patient chart when Derek appeared in the hallway outside the nurse's station. He shouldn't have been able to get past security, but Derek had always been good at talking his way into places he didn't belong. "We need to talk." He planted himself in front of me. "Now. I'm working." I tried to step around him. "And you're not supposed to be up here without patient authorization." I told them I was visiting family. His jaw was tight. "We need to discuss this Luca person and what you think you're doing. What I'm doing is none of your concern." I kept my voice low, aware of other nurses pretending not to listen. "Now leave before I call security myself." "Is he paying you?" The question stopped me cold. "Is that what this is? Some arrangement where he gives you money and you show up at events as his girlfriend?" The accusation stung. "Get out, Derek." "Because that would make sense. You need the money. He clearly has it. And you've never been above taking help when it benefited you." "I've never taken a dime from you or anyone else." My hands clenched into fists. "I work for everything I have. Everything Marcus has. So whatever fantasy you've constructed, you can keep it to yourself." "Then what does he want from you?" "Nothing you ever wanted. Now leave before I have you escorted out." Derek left, but not before shooting me a look that promised this conversation wasn't over. I spent the rest of my shift shaking, adrenaline making my hands unsteady enough that I had to ask another nurse to help with a particularly tricky 4 insertion. The shift ended at 7. I picked up Marcus from the aftercare program, listened to him chatter about the dinosaur project they'd done, and drove us home through evening traffic that gave me too much time to think. About Derek's accusations. About Luca's card still in my wallet. About how close I was to calling that number and agreeing to something I knew was a terrible idea. Rachel was waiting when we got home, as she did every Tuesday. Our weekly tradition of dinner together, the only real social life I had outside of work and motherhood. She'd brought Thai takeout and that particular expression that said she had questions I wouldn't want to answer. "So." Rachel waited until Marcus was occupied with his spring rolls before leaning across my kitchen table. "Sarah called me today. And Nathan. And your mother. All wanting to know if I knew about this Luca person you're apparently dating." "I'm not dating him." I pushed pad thai around my plate. "It was one night. A favor. We danced at the wedding and pretended to be together so my family would stop treating me like I'm broken." "A favor?" Rachel's dark eyebrows climbed. "Amanda, nobody does favors like that for strangers. What does he want?" "He wants his family to stop pressuring him about getting married. I want my family to stop pitying me. It was mutually beneficial." "Was. Is." I corrected myself, then immediately regretted it. "Maybe." He suggested we continue the arrangement for a few weeks. Just until everyone stops asking questions. Rachel sat back. "This is insane. You know this is insane, right?" "I'm aware." I finally met her eyes. "But you weren't there Saturday night. You didn't see how everyone looked at me. Or how Derek acted like he had any right to an opinion about my life. For one evening, I felt like someone who mattered. Is that really so terrible? Not terrible. Just dangerous. Rachel reached across to squeeze my hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me if this guy turns out to be trouble, you'll walk away. I promise. The lie came easily. I was already planning to call Luca the moment Rachel left. She stayed until 9, helping me get Marcus bathed and into bed. After she left, I cleaned the kitchen and tried to convince myself that calling Luca was a mistake. That continuing this farce would only make things worse when it inevitably fell apart. I was still debating at 10:30 when my phone rang. A known number. Hello. Amanda. It's Luca. I hope I'm not calling too late. His voice sent an unexpected shiver through me. How did you get my number? The Pattersons. I mentioned I'd enjoyed meeting you and wanted to follow up. The pause. Have you thought about my proposal? I've thought about little else. I moved to the window, looking out at Boston's nightscape. This is crazy. You know that, right? Perhaps. But crazy doesn't mean wrong. His voice was warm, intimate. What concerns you most about it? Everything. The lying. What happens if we get caught? What happens when it ends? I leaned against the windowsill. Whether I can trust you not to make this harder than it needs to be. I can't promise it won't be complicated, Amanda. But I can promise I'll keep you and Marcus safe. That no harm will come to either of you because of decisions I make. He paused. And I can promise that if you want out at any time, you just say the word and we're done. No questions, no pressure, no drama. Why are you doing this? There must be easier ways to get your family off your back. Because when I saw you sitting at that table Saturday night, trying so hard to be invisible when you deserve to be seen, I recognized something. His voice softened. I recognized someone who understands what it's like to carry weight that isn't yours to carry. To be judged for circumstances outside your control. To want just one moment where you're not the person everyone expects you to be. The honesty in his words cracked something open in my chest. Okay. I'll do it. Your arrangement. For a few weeks. Until our families back off. I closed my eyes, hoping I wasn't making the biggest mistake of my life. But we need ground rules. Clear boundaries. And the moment Marcus becomes confused or affected by any of this, we stop immediately. Laughing, discovering unexpected connections. When he drove me home later, Thomas discreetly giving us privacy, and walked me to my door, it felt natural when he kissed my cheek goodnight. Saturday, he said. There's a charity gala. Technology industry event. The Pattersons will be there, which makes it perfect for us to be seen together. Will you come? I'll need to find something to wear. Galas aren't exactly in my usual budget. Then let me help. Please. He held up a hand before I could protest. This benefits us both. You look beautiful, I look like I have excellent taste, and your family sees more evidence that you've moved on. Consider it a business expense. I should have refused. Should have maintained my independence. But the idea of showing up at Derek's workplace event, because of course he'd be there, looking genuinely stunning rather than like someone making do, was too tempting. But nothing excessive. I'm not a dress-up doll. I wouldn't dream of it. His smile suggested he was already planning something. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow with details. That Saturday, I stood in front of my mirror barely recognizing myself. The dress Luca's assistant had sent over was deep emerald green, elegantly simple but clearly expensive. It fit perfectly, which suggested he'd somehow determined my exact measurements. My hair had been done by a stylist who'd come to my apartment. Light makeup that enhanced rather than masked. Marcus had been fascinated by the transformation. Mommy, you look like a princess. Thank you, baby. I kissed his forehead, careful not to smudge my lipstick. Rachel's going to stay with you tonight, okay? I have to go to a fancy party for work. With Mr. Luca? He'd met Luca twice now, brief encounters where Luca had stopped by with coffee and spent 10 minutes asking Marcus about his dinosaurs with genuine interest. Yes, with Mr. Luca. I like him. He knows lots about dinosaurs. Not as much as me, but he's pretty smart. Marcus returned to his blocks. You should marry him so I can have a daddy like the other kids. My heart cracked. Baby, it's not that simple. Why not? He's nice. You're nice. That's how it works, right? Before I could explain the complexities of adult relationships to a 4-year-old, the doorbell rang. Rachel arriving to babysit. She took one look at me and whistled. Okay, so this fake relationship is coming with real benefits. You look amazing. It's too much. I tugged at the dress. I feel like I'm playing dress up. You feel like someone finally treating you the way you deserve to be treated. Rachel squeezed my hand. Go. Have fun. Let your family and that ass Derek see what they missed out on. Luca's reaction when I opened the door made the entire uncomfortable transformation worth it. His eyes widened fractionally, and for a moment he just stared. Amanda. My name came out rough. You look too much. I smoothed the dress nervously. Perfect. You look absolutely perfect. He offered his arm. Shall we? The gala was everything I'd expected, elegant people in expensive clothes, making conversation that danced around actual meaning. But with Luca beside me, his hand warm at my back, introducing me to his colleagues with genuine pride rather than obligation, I found myself relaxing into the role. We'd been there maybe an hour when I saw Derek across the room. He was with Melissa, her pregnancy now impossible to ignore at 8 months. But he was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, surprise, perhaps, or regret. Ignore him, Luca murmured against my ear. He's not worth your attention. He's going to come over here. I can tell. Then let him. Let him see what he gave up. Luca's arm tightened around my waist. You're not the same woman he left. You're stronger, more beautiful, and you're here with someone who actually appreciates that. Derek did approach, eventually. Melissa wasn't with him, bathroom break, probably, or holding court with her own circle. He looked between Luca and me with barely concealed irritation. Amanda. Luca. He acknowledged us both stiffly. I didn't realize you two were serious enough for public events. We're quite serious, Luca said smoothly. Amanda's been patient with my schedule, but I wanted to make sure everyone understood she's taken. The possessiveness in his tone should have annoyed me. Instead, it sent warmth through my chest. Taken. Derek's laugh was bitter. That's interesting. Amanda's never been the type to be anyone's possession. She's not a possession. Luca's voice cooled several degrees. She's a partner. There's a difference. Though I suppose you wouldn't understand that, given your history. The tension ratcheted up. Before Derek could respond, Melissa appeared at his elbow, looking exhausted and uncomfortable. Derek, I need to go home. The baby's been kicking all evening and I can barely stand. She noticed us then, managing a polite smile despite obvious discomfort. Amanda. You look lovely. Thank you. How are you feeling? Miserable, honestly. She laughed without humor. But that's pregnancy, right? Worth it in the end, or so everyone keeps telling me. Something in her tone suggested she had doubts. Derek looked annoyed at the interruption, which told me more about their marriage than any gossip could. We should get you home then, I said gently. Take care of yourself, Melissa. After they left, Luca pulled me onto the dance floor. The music was slow, romantic, and his arms around me felt increasingly less like an act and more like something I wanted to be real. You were kind to her, he observed. Your cousin. Even though she married your ex-husband. She's 8 months pregnant and miserable. That supersedes whatever complicated history we have. I rested my head against his shoulder. Besides, I think she's figuring out what I learned years ago. Derek's charming until you actually need him. Then he disappears. His loss. Luca's lips brushed my temple. Completely and utterly his loss. We danced through 3 songs before he led me off the floor toward a quieter corner. His expression had grown serious. Amanda, I need to be honest with you about something. My stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. It's not bad. Just complicated. He ran a hand through his hair, the first nervous gesture I'd seen from him. My business isn't just technology consulting. I mean, that's part of it. But my family, We have other interests. Investments in businesses that operate in gray areas. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would put you at risk, but not entirely above board either. Gray areas meaning what? Meaning we help businesses navigate regulations. Sometimes we invest in companies that need discretion. We facilitate connections between people who prefer privacy in their dealings. He met my eyes steadily. I'm not a criminal, Amanda. But I'm not entirely legitimate either. And you deserve to know that before this goes any further. I should have walked away. Should have ended this right there. But instead, I found myself asking, does any of this illegal activity involve hurting people? Never. My grandmother made me promise, whatever I did in business, I would never cause harm to innocent people. I've kept that promise. Then why tell me? Because this started as pretend, but it's not feeling very fake anymore. At least not to me. His hand cupped my face gently. And I won't lie to you about who I am. Even if it means you decide this is too complicated to continue. Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the confidence, I made a decision that probably said terrible things about my judgment. I'm not walking away. His expression transformed. You're sure? I'm sure that nothing about my life has been simple since I met you. I'm sure that for the first time in 5 years, I feel like someone sees me as more than just a struggling single mother. I'm sure that when you hold me, I feel safer than I've felt since Marcus was born. I smiled. So no, I'm not walking away. Not yet. Luca kissed me then. Not on the cheek like he'd been doing for appearances. A real kiss, deep and searching and full of promises that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. This is real now, isn't it? I whispered. This was always real, he said. We were just too scared to admit it. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. All I could think about was Luca's kiss. The way his hand felt in mine. How right this felt despite starting as complete fabrication. He drove me home himself that night, Thomas given the evening off. We sat in his car outside my building, neither of us wanting the night to end. Come to dinner next week, he said. Bring Marcus. I want to know him properly, not just as facts I've memorized. I want to be part of your actual life, not just the performance version. Luca, if Marcus gets attached and this doesn't work out, then we make sure it works out. He kissed my knuckles. I'm not Derek, Amanda. I don't run when things get complicated. I fight for what I want. And I want this. You, Marcus, whatever family we might build together. Tears stung my eyes. We barely know each other. Then let's fix that. One dinner at a time. One day at a time. Until we know each other so well that pretending becomes impossible because everything is real. I agreed to dinner. Agreed to let him into Marcus's life properly. Agreed to take a chance on something that had started as convenience and become anything but. Over the next month, Luca proved he meant what he said. He came to dinner twice a week, bringing Marcus's favorite dinosaur books and sitting on my living room floor to play. He showed up at the hospital with coffee on days when my shifts were particularly brutal. He attended Marcus's preschool performance, sitting beside me and applauding like a proud parent. My family stopped asking questions. They saw the way he looked at me, the way Marcus had started calling him Luca instead of Mr. Luca, the way we moved together like we'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Even Derek stopped his hostile comments. He'd seen us at enough events, witnessed enough genuine affection, that he'd apparently accepted I'd moved on. 6 weeks after Emma's wedding, Luca took me and Marcus to a small Italian restaurant in the North End. The same one where he and I had planned our arrangement. But this time felt different. After dessert, while Marcus was occupied with coloring on the kids' menu, Luca reached across the table and took my hand. Amanda, I need to tell you something. My heart raced. That sounds serious. It is. His thumb traced circles on my palm. This started as pretend. An arrangement to help us both breathe easier with our families. But somewhere between that first dance and tonight, watching you help Marcus sound out words on this menu, everything changed. Luca, let me finish. He squeezed my hand gently. I fell in love with you. Not with the idea of you. Not with the convenience of you. With you. The woman who works until exhaustion because kids need someone to care. The mother who makes up stories about dinosaurs at bedtime. The person who shows kindness to her cousin even though she has every reason not to. Tears were streaming down my face. I fell in love with you too. Weeks ago. Maybe even that first night when you saw me at my worst and decided I was worth knowing anyway. So let's stop pretending. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Let's make this real. All of it. Me, Marcus. A family built on honesty and love instead of convenience. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Amanda Hayes, will you marry me? For real this time? Not as an arrangement but as a promise that I'm going to spend every day proving I'm worth the risk you took on me? Marcus looked up from his coloring. Is Luca going to be my daddy now? I laughed through my tears. Would you like that, baby? Yes. Then I'll have a daddy like the other kids. He bounced in his seat. Say yes, Mommy. Say yes. I looked at Luca, this man who'd entered my life as a convenient fiction and become the most real thing I had. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The restaurant erupted in applause. Luca slid the ring onto my finger, then pulled me across the table to kiss me while Marcus cheered and several elderly Italian women at nearby tables wiped away tears. Later, after Marcus had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Luca carried him upstairs to my apartment while I fumbled with keys, my engagement ring catching the hallway light. We tucked Marcus into bed together, this man who'd chosen to be a father to a child who wasn't his. Who'd chosen me when I came with complications and responsibilities and a past that would have sent smarter men running. I love you, I whispered as we stood in Marcus's doorway, watching him sleep. I love you for seeing me. For choosing us. For making me believe in happy endings again. I love you, Luca said, pulling me close. And this is just the beginning. The real story starts now. Standing there in my small apartment that would soon become ours, I realized that sometimes the best love stories start with pretending. Start with a dance at a wedding where you're trying to be invisible. Start with a stranger who sees you clearly and decides you're worth everything. What began as a favor had become forever. And I wouldn't change a single moment of how we got here.